The short answer... not really. The long answer...
Even before Studio Pierrot completely butchered yet another Shonen Jump adaptation, Black Clover already had an excessively divisive reputation amongst fans in the West, some calling it the worst Shonen Jump manga they've ever read. To which I say that you clearly haven't been paying attention to some of the crap that's come out of the Jumpstart initiative. But is Black Clover really as bad as they say it is? For this video, I'll be unearthing all the core storytelling and artistic components of the series in order to find out. Let's jump straight into the biggest complaint about the series as a whole, that being its extremely derivative nature. There are many different elements in Black Clover that feel like they were pulled directly from past source materials. A protagonist who starts off with nothing, but then gains a special ability that gives him a ton of power, a society in which the most powerful superpower user is the head of said society, a rivalry between the uber talented and the talentless, a low tier mission that inadvertently becomes extremely dangerous and puts everyone's lives at risk, a guild that's known for being rambunctious and destroying everything. You don't even have to be that familiar with shonen manga to know that Black Clover is very much steeped in the tropes of its forebears. But on its own, that's not necessarily a bad thing. While Shonen Jump is known for breaking the mold and setting new standards for others to follow, it's also incredibly incestuous and very often takes cues from everything around it. There are plenty of Shonen Jump manga that pull influences from other Jump series. If you strip away the genre and setting, My Hero Academia looks quite a bit like Naruto, but most people don't really care about that comparison because Hiroaka makes its differences apparent as soon as possible. This to me is Black Clover's biggest flaw. It's not that it doesn't make itself stand out, but rather that it's just a tad too slow at doing so. Let's check out the rivalry between our main characters, Asta and Yuno, which has been compared to the Naruto-Sasuke dynamic ad nauseum. Despite having similar backgrounds, the two could not be more different in both personality and magical ability. Asta is bold, brash, and doesn't take guff from anyone no matter how trivial the issue, while Yuno is calm, collected, and rarely ever instigates a situation. More importantly, Yuno is incredibly gifted when it comes to magic, while Asta has no magical ability whatsoever. The rivalry fueled by skill gaps is an old trope not just in Shonen Jump, but in media in general, and it's the easiest way to present a hurdle for our main character to work towards conquering right away. Additionally, in most situations, the main character and his rival butt heads not just because they are chasing similar goals, but also because there's some kind of personal animosity between them. Naruto can't stand Sasuke's guts and too cool for school attitude, while Sasuke feels disgusted by Naruto's presence simply because he's so annoying and weak. Midoriya appears to have been friends with Bakugo at one point, but because of Bakugo's excessive talent and Midoriya's lack of said talent, Bakugo began to view Midoriya as a lesser being and thus treats him like dirt, even though Midoriya still seems to look up to him. But neither of these are the case in Black Clover. Rather than having any personal issues between them, Asta and Yuno are actually really close friends. They spent basically their entire lives together growing up in an orphanage, and because they were around each other so much, they act almost like brothers. Moreover, they often end up encouraging each other to get stronger throughout the manga. And because of an incident in the past where Asta saved Yuno from a robber, they both have a deep respect for each other's skills. Even though Asta doesn't have any magic, Yuno respects his sheer physical prowess and unbreakable willpower. Asta and Yuno see each other as equals right away, a far cry from the dynamic of most Shonen Jump rivalries. So why then do so many people compare these two to Naruto and Sasuke? Well, unfortunately, it's because of the first chapter, which tries to do a bit of a fake out with the true nature of their relationship. Without the knowledge of what comes afterwards, most of Yuno's statements towards Asta come off as someone who sees himself as being superior, and Asta quarrels with him like someone who's trying to earn his respect. In reality, this is just the way that they banter, but it still feels like kind of a cheap tactic in order to have that twist at the end of the chapter. This concept of being just a tad late on originality is is extremely prevalent throughout the manga, and I can understand why that would frustrate a lot of people. Even still, with most of these points, they do end up getting their own original flair eventually, and often a lot faster than you'd might expect. This leads into what I perceive as Black Clover's biggest strength, its readability. Black Clover is an insanely fast read, even by Shonen Jump standards. I think it only took me maybe 40 minutes to read the third volume, and I'm typically a very slow reader because I like scanning for details. For a time comparison, I usually average about an hour per volume for a manga that I really like, such as Hiroaka and One Piece, and yet Black Clover just blazes by with ease. At first, this might seem like the result of lack of detail or foresight in story planning, but that's not quite the case. As Mother's Basement pointed out, Black Clover often ends up glossing over many of the tropes that we're used to in favor of getting to the point as quickly as possible and then moving on to the next idea. Take the chapter that introduces Noelle, for example. Noelle is set up as an uptight and snobbish member of a royal family, and so she looks down on Asta and the rest of their guild, the Black Bulls. Yet at the same time, she also can't control her magic, something that she hides from everyone else until it goes completely out of control. Additionally, despite the typical noble attitude of not having to try to be good at magic, Noelle puts an intense amount of effort into doing just that so that she can live up to her family's name. By the end of the chapter, she's gained an entirely new perspective on Asta and the Black Bulls because they showed her hospitality and friendship despite her lack of magical talent, as opposed to the harsh and critical world of the nobles that she comes from. All of this is accomplished in just a single chapter of manga. The first time I read it, I actually thought that it went by too fast because I wanted to dwell on Noelle's emotions a little bit longer. Despite that, I still ended up loving her character as the series went on because Tabata was so concise and direct in creating her as quickly as possible and then shoving her out to interact with the other characters. This leads into another big strength of the series, the cast as a whole, and this also gives me an opportunity to compare it to another series that Black Clover is often compared to, Fairy Tail. Fairy Tail is garbage. It is hot dog shit on a stick with very few redeeming qualities, and I highly recommend checking out Craftsdwarf's series of Fairy Tail videos for more detail. The flaw of Fairy Tail I want to focus on for right now, however, is the idea of the guild and interaction within said guild. What makes Fairy Tail's guild concept fall apart is that its member count is excessively high, with probably somewhere between 20 and 30 members at the start of the series, and only growing bigger from there. Because of this, when Fairy Tail tries to make a point about how they're all friends because they're guildmates and they have to help each other out, or tries to convey the idea that every member of the guild is a necessary addition, it completely falls apart because most of the guild doesn't get any screen time whatsoever. It's hard to convey empathy for a group of 30 people when 20 of those people mean nothing to the plot nor the flow of any given battle. The Black Bulls, however, are considerably smaller, with only 11 members. This is still relatively large in comparison to other Jump series, but it's still much more manageable. Because of this more manageable size, we actually get to see the entire guild interact with each other all at once without being completely overwhelmed. Yes, some of the characters still end up in the background, but as the story goes on, almost every member of the guild gets either some kind of personal character arc, or at least does something interesting to make them memorable and valuable to the guild itself. Even the characters that feel like gimmicks at first turn out to have memorable and engaging stories to tell. And because we actually get to become familiar with the entire Black Bulls guild, that also makes it easier to write in distinctive personalities for members of the other guilds, such as Crimson Lion King and Golden Dawn, the latter of which Yuno belongs to and thus makes it quite important to the story. There is one flaw that I will relent on with this series overall though, and that is the dialogue itself. Much more often than I would like, the actual words being said are either extremely simplistic and juvenile, or just outright annoying, and the first few pages of chapter 1 are highly representative of the latter. They didn't just pull that obnoxious screaming out of thin air for the anime, it actually has a direct parallel in the manga, and it's just as annoying to read as it is to hear. Fortunately, this only lasts for about 10 pages or so before Tabata gives up on it entirely. It seems clear that he realized this would get annoying really fast, and so he ended up dropping it, though I'm still not sure why he left it in for that first chunk of chapter 1. In terms of how the more cheesy lines impact the story overall, it's very give and take. You could interpret some of these lines as having more metaphorical meanings and thus make them sound a bit more understandable, but on the other hand, lines like "I don't have magic, but I do have friends" are about as stereotypically shonen as you can possibly get, and it makes the series feel a bit immature. Another narrative element that Black Clover doesn't entirely have control over yet is its power structure. This is a problem that a lot of magic-based shonen anime have in general, but the possibilities of future faults are already apparent in the first few volumes. Traditional fantasy magic is a difficult power to quantify because its parameters are so broad and ill-defined, and so the fights in Black Clover basically devolve into, well, this.
Punch face, let's see who goes harder until one of us passes out. And yet...
If you're really into the highly structured battles of Hunter x Hunter and early Naruto, then Black Clover will drive you insane with how unstructured and simplistic its battles are. What really drives these battles forward narratively is that the good guys always end up putting their all into each fight. That sounds like an incredibly stupid thing to say because what else would they be doing? But the biggest underlying theme of Black Clover is the power of effort. The only reason Asta is even a powerful magic knight at all is because he has to put in so much physical effort, training his body day in and day out in the hopes of having at least something that he can use to match up to someone who can use magic. That in itself is an interesting concept to think about. Like, what if an enemy shows up who can neutralize other people's magic? Most people would be pretty screwed since magic is so ubiquitous in their society and they wouldn't know what to do if they lost that ability. But Asta, not having magic at all in the first place, can still smack the living daylights out of somebody if he gets the drop on them. This could also play into an idea of every person having value and just needing the right circumstances to put their value to good use, which is a pretty important lesson for young readers facing a very scary adult world. There's a moment in volume 3 where Asta and Yuno ask the Wizard King what it takes to get into that top position, and as one of the side characters starts going on about having noble character and winning over the hearts and minds of others, the Wizard King interrupts him and simply says, "It's merit." In this one line, Black Clover makes it crystal clear that our heroes aren't going to succeed in this story simply because they're the heroes. They're gonna have to bust their asses to get what they want. Whether Tabata actually sticks to this concept as we go forward is up for debate, but it gives us a solid idea of what Tabata is thinking about when he writes the battles in Black Clover. Still, I can understand why people might be disappointed in the technical aspects of these battles, and yet the combat itself still maintains this level of exhilaration and intensity because of the last great strength of this series, Tabata's artistic talent. While I would rate the actual design sense and individual artistic value of each character and set piece as somewhat above average, Tabata's true strength lies in his mastery of panel layout and flow, relating back to what I said earlier about how fast a read this series is. Minimizing information while maximizing detail is an incredibly difficult concept to master, and yet Tabata already seems fluid in doing so. Very rarely do I get lost in the action like I so often did in Bleach or Naruto, and yet I still find most of the panels to be intensely gratifying in their construction. What's more, Tabata also excels at crafting huge impact moments that are meant to stick with you and burn the manga's images into your brain. Let's go back to that panel earlier where the Wizard King is talking to Asta and Yuno. The Wizard King takes up a full 2/3 of the panel, implying his dominance in the scene. This dominance is further accentuated by his head and gaze being pointed down with a shadow partially covering his face and beams of light shining down from behind him, while Asta and Yuno are looking up with their faces completely covered in the Wizard King's shadow. The fact that the Wizard King's panel is also directly on top of Asta and Yuno's is also significant, as though the Wizard King's response is like a weight crushing down on them, a single yet massive challenge that they must overcome. You want to get my job? Then get to work. And it's hard not to admire how direct and firm this story is with its message. In short, despite its many narrative flaws, Black Clover is still a fun and exciting read because it's A, concise and fast, and B, able to create big impact moments that stick with the reader. Realistically, I think the reason why Black Clover gets shit on so much isn't because of all its bad points, but rather because of its place in Shonen Jump right now. Two of the big three are long gone, with only one piece remaining, and a bunch of legitimately great new stories like My Hero Academia, Dr. Stone, and The Promised Neverland are both capturing the hearts of readers and, more importantly, taking radical new steps towards ensuring their originality. The holes left by two of the biggest manga giants of the past 15 years are being filled by stories willing to take risks. Black Clover is very much a product of 2000s Shonen Jump, and that's perfectly fine. It was wildly successful in the past, and I doubt that much will change in the near future. Is it disappointing that it isn't making the same bold moves as its contemporaries? Yeah, a little, but having a story being standard while also being really, really good at that standard is still nice. As for me, well, hopefully I finally have time to sink my teeth into Volume 9, which has been sitting on my coffee table for over a week now by the time this video comes out. But what do you guys think? Have you had a chance to read Black Clover, and what are your thoughts on it? Let me know in the comments below, as well as other topics you'd like me to cover in the future. Special thanks to Jan Rogalski, Rourke Tenjoin, and all my other Patreon supporters. If you'd like your name listed here along with access to other content such as a Discord server and patron-exclusive videos, check out the link in the description below. Also, I'm going to be launching a side channel this weekend with this tentative name that I've put up on screen, where I'll be posting some rambling vlogs and other type of videos that I don't think are suited to my main channel. So check that out if you just want to hear more of my thoughts on random ideas. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that little notification bell so you can stay up to date on all my latest content. Share this video around with people you think might be interested. Check out my written content over at Digital Fox Media, and don't forget to follow me on Facebook and Twitter. My name is Ember, and I'll see you next time.